Fu sat there in his big, comfy chair in the control room of his lab. It was at this time that Madara walked into the room. There he saw a smaller chair sitting there that had the name Madara sewn onto the back. Madara walked over, spun it around, and looked it over, all while Fu looked at him out of the corner of his eye with a barely concealed smile, waiting to see Madara's reaction. Madara did not give him the pleasure of one. He simply sat down. This chair is adequate. Fu knew Madara and the kind of man he was, so he took this as a compliment, the best he thought he could get. "What are you watching now?" Madara asked. "More experiments?" Fu shook his head. "No, I felt nostalgic, my bestest buddy. I'm traveling down memory lane." Memory lane. Madara then noticed the video on the screen. "Is this when you had me reincarnate as Naruto?" he asked. "This is when we first met. And this Amagi guy was kind enough to record it all for us. Be sure to subscribe, Madara. Only 25% of his viewers do that. We might be evil, but we won't be non-subscribers." Madara cracked a smile as he looked at the video. Fu began to grin as he saw Madara smile. "This was a fortunate meeting for me," Madara said. "Who could have known what I would have become at that moment?" "I did," Fu said. "I saw your potential and I couldn't let it go to waste. And now we're far more than just partners. We're friends." "I wouldn't go that far." The microwave went off. "Ooh, the popcorn's done." Fu ran over and grabbed it and a soda. Getting in the chair, he handed Madara a bag of gummy worms. "Let's just watch the story and enjoy a well-deserved day off. Tomorrow we begin another experiment that I'm sure will knock your socks off." Fu dug into the cushion of his seat for the remote. Pressing the button, he spoke. "Play movie." As he laid there and died, Madara could not help but feel overwhelming disgust. There was a slight bit of pride, but it was bittersweet. To have come so far, only for all of his efforts to be completely destroyed because of not one, but two traitors to his cause. He had trusted Black Zetsu, believing he had created it, but it seems he too was lied to. Black Zetsu didn't carry his own will, but instead the will and genetic information of that woman, that Otsutsuki. If it hadn't been for her, or Naruto and Sasuke, he would have won. But now it was too late. His body, though only returned to health and vigor but a few hours ago, was now broken beyond repair, ruined. His body had been mistreated by Kaguya, whose eruption from within him was violent and chaotic. Though he might not have looked as bad as he thought he would have, the effects still remained. His very internal organs burned from the strain, stress, and tearing that had been caused. But that wasn't what was killing him. The Ten Tails itself had mostly healed the more traumatic injuries that threatened his life. The last nail in the literal coffin was the removal of that Ten Tails. To say that Madara was pissed off would be to undersell the true rage he felt. If he had not yet awakened his Mangekyo Sharingan, he felt as if he would be able to right now with the pure, murderous rage he felt in his heart for Obito and Black Zetsu. The only consolation he received as he died was knowing that he outlived them both. They had both been killed before him. Obito first by the ash bone that would dissolve his traitorous hide to ash. And Zetsu, well, technically he was still alive, but his fate was possibly worse than death. Forever sealed away in a dreamless slumber, within a mindless creature, a dead ghost in a statue. To this end, he smiled. But quickly that smile faded away as darkness grew closer to him. That was until he heard something. The clang of metal, like armor. He saw it, a burgundy shadow, dark and looming as it grew closer. His Sharingan were active, but they were now too dim to see. Ironic that his dojutsu, designed to see better, was now too blurry to tell what was right in front of his face. His chakra sense told him it was a familiar face, though. "Is that you, Hashirama?" he asked. "Yes," came the voice of the man he both respected and despised, and loved to hate. "I guess that neither you nor I were able to achieve what we wanted." "It's never that easy," Hashirama said. "Our job is to merely do all that we can while we're alive, and then to bequeath the rest of it for future generations to accomplish." Madara scoffed. "You are so naive. Just as you usually are," Madara said as he grasped the ground. At that moment, time seemed to freeze. Everything froze around them. Hashirama, mid-sentence, froze. Reality came screeching to a halt. That's when he noticed him, standing in the distance. A man that was approaching him. What kind of man can stop time at the snap of his fingers? The man approached and knelt down before Madara. His hair was white and his skin was purple. He was unlike anything he'd ever seen before, a demon in all senses of the word, but there was something familiar about him. Behind the wire-frame glasses sat a pair of what appeared to be Rinnegan. "Who are you?" Madara asked through his weakened respiratory system. "Hiya, my name's Fu, and I'm your benefactor today." "Fu," Madara said. "Legends," he continued. Fu raised an eyebrow. "Oh, does my reputation precede me?" "The legends speak for themselves. A demigod with abilities one could see as magical. Now that I see you with my own eyes, I know that not to be true. You are a sage of 6 paths." Fu let off a chuckle. "I am a sage, yes, but before I was a sage, I still fulfilled those legends. Magic does exist, and in this world I can do anything." "How boring," Madara said. Fu laughed again. "You know what? I really like you, Madara. I'm working on a grand experiment, and I want you to be a part of it. A visionary mind like yours can do anything, has the will to do anything. I can grant you anything you desire, but first, I want you to gather a little energy. So while you're giving me what I want to give you what you want." Fu raised his hands and snapped his fingers. In but a moment, Madara felt as though his soul was completely torn from his body. He didn't even have enough time to gasp in pain. As time resumed, Hashirama saw the body go limp. It was unexpected, but it seemed that Madara had died suddenly. How peculiar. A rush of memories and emotions passed through Madara's mind so quickly that he could not process them. It was as if the entirety of decades worth of information was being poured into his mind. His mind, even having grown used to the Sharingan and its Mangekyou variant, still couldn't process this information fast enough. Suddenly, it was dark. Dark and hot. "Hell," he said in his gravelly, wonderful voice. Neil Kaplan, if you're watching this, you're the best. "I'm in hell," he said. No, there were no flames. The heat wasn't that intense. It was less like the flames of hell and more like the steam of a sauna. His eyes opened and birds were singing. "Where am I?" he asked. He looked around. He was in bed. The window was open. Sitting up, his sheets peeled from his back due to the intense sweat. He looked at the clock. It was 30 minutes to noon. Looking out the window, he saw the very village he helped found and tried to annihilate. Konoha. Feeling how sticky his shirt and shorts were, he realized the truth. He hadn't yet recognized the pattern on the shirt. "It's a heat wave," he said. "Huh, I guess the voice travels with you," a voice said. Madara turned around to face the voice. It was Fu. He was hovering just above the ground, legs crossed, arms crossed, like some meditating monk judging his every movement. "What is this?" Madara demanded to know. Fu raised his arms to show him the room. "You've been reborn." "Reborn?" Madara asked. Fu nodded. "The one thing you wanted there at the end, right? The chance to do it all over again? Well, congratulations, here's your chance. But I even gave you a bit of a leg up." Fu pointed back to the bathroom. Madara looked past him into the mirror. "I am Uzumaki Naruto." Fu nodded. "I took you back about half a decade. Your soul now inhabits Naruto's body." "If my soul's in Naruto's body, then where is Naruto's soul?" Madara asked. Fu shrugged. "As a sage of 6 paths yourself, you should probably know better than to ask questions about what happens to the souls when separated from their bodies." Madara began to catch on. He started to smile. "Interesting. So this is my chance to make good on my dreams. What do you get out of this?" Fu pushed his glasses up as they sparkled in the sunlight. "I get all the energy this timeline creates for myself." "Energy?" Madara questioned. "You mean sage energy?" Fu thought about it. "If that helps you understand it, I suppose. But consider it to be a test of sorts, an initiation, a way to see what you're capable of with my own 2 eyes. I, too, have heard legends. These legends were of a ghost who wandered battlefields, preying upon the dead and dying like a vulture. A ghost whose will lived on well past his years, who decimated an entire army by his lonesome. A man who challenged the whole world and won. That's the kind of man I think I could use. But first, I want to know what you're capable of, truly, with my own eyes. Consider the energy you give me from this new timeline as the good faith offering you would give to a new business partner. And in return, I'll give you a world where you will succeed in your goals, but only if you're worthy. What do you say?" Madara thought about it. He let off a smile. "I think I will take you up on this offer." Fu clapped his hands. Good. Deal struck. I'll be off now. I won't be around much after this, but just know that I'm always watching you. Ta-ta. And with that, Fu disappeared. Madara got out of bed and walked to the window and looked out. His mind ran wild with possibilities. With his current physical strength, he was not yet ready to take on the world. But with his abilities and natural skill, he still stood over most shinobi in this village. He just had to awaken his true potential. And there was only one way to do that. He stepped to the closet and opened the door. Looking inside, he saw nothing but the same garish orange outfit. How this passes for shinobi garb is beyond me, he said. He opted for a dark-colored t-shirt and some shorts to match. It had been a long time since he had dressed so childishly. His body craved to be back in its old armor, but things were different now. This was no longer his body. This was no longer his life. But he would make it his body. He would make it his life. After changing into this new outfit, he looked at himself in the mirror and into those baby blues he now possessed. I know exactly where to start. He left the apartment and began walking down the road. As he did, he stopped into a military surplus store. With all the money Hiruzen had given Naruto for the month, he bought nothing but weapons. Aren't you a little bit young to be buying a Fuba shuriken? The store owner asked, as if he were looking for a reason to deny Naruto's service. Aren't you a bit fat to be asking such questions? Madara asked in return, pointing out that the man obviously hadn't been training with the weapons he sold. The man's eyes widened in rage. Why, you? He reached out and grabbed Madara by the collar, lifting him over the counter. As he did, Madara looked down upon him with the same ascendant gaze he had given all others save a few. The man suddenly felt the pressure coming off of Madara and began to wonder what mistake he had made by laying hands on this one. The nine-tailed demon fox, the man wondered. Madara thought about it for a moment. Ah, yes, this one always had the nine tails, didn't he? Touching his feet down on the table, Madara gripped the man by his forearm. Despite the hand being so small, it gave off incredible strength. That strength continued to grow more and more potent the more Madara squeezed. The level of chakra he was putting off at this point was unusual for one this size. Eventually, his grip snapped the man's radius and ulna in half. His arm fell to the side, held together simply by the skin and musculature. Hopping down from the counter, Madara broke open one of the scrolls he had purchased and began sealing his newly purchased weapons into them. Madara would then leave the location. Stepping out into the sunlight, he looked up at that dreadful sun, the heat burning over paradise. The oppression of this heat was the weight of the shinobi world and the reality in which they lived. It was the heat which he hated yet thrived in. He loved the thrill of war, and no place better did he belong than on the battlefield. He popped his neck and began to think about himself, what he needed. What he wanted, he would have it. But what he needed now was to find that boy, the boy who had been his legacy. Hashirama was a fool for leaving the future to the next generation. Madara had done that with Obito, and he had failed. Now it was time for him to usurp his legacy again. An Indra incarnate in the body of an Ashura incarnate. It was only a matter of time until he awakened the Six Paths powers. But before he did, he needed to retrieve a pair of Sharingan to evolve. While it was true he could simply go and retrieve the Rinnegan that had once been his, he realized that in this new body with these new genetics, he would be unable to revert the Rinnegan back into his Sharingan and Mangekyo Sharingan. No more Susanoo, no more photographic vision. While Madara knew that he would no longer be in possession of the techniques he had grown accustomed to, he knew that it could be far worse, and Amaterasu was far from a bad technique. If anything, Madara believed he might fare even better with Amaterasu than anything else, and so he began to look for the boy, Sasuke. Passing through the village, he knew he would find him somewhere. It wasn't like Madara couldn't sense him. Besides, where would an orphan really go in this village? Walking through the area, he found Sasuke sitting on a small dock, hanging out over a lake. That had once been his favorite spot as well. Between the Choco Tomoe and this, Madara was certain that Sasuke was indeed his successor. So in a way, he felt as though he were doing himself a disservice by attacking him. But then again, there were causal nexuses that couldn't be separated. Madara was strong. He was a victor, and this meant Sasuke would be weak and the vanquished. Consider it payback for the Fourth Great Ninja War. He walked along the dock behind Sasuke. Sasuke turned around and saw him there. Madara stopped behind him. Sasuke spoke. "Where's that ugly orange jumpsuit you normally wear?" It was at this time that a foot was planted into Sasuke's back, pushing the air from his lungs while simultaneously putting him into the water. Sasuke struggled for a moment to get to the surface. Once he grabbed the dock and began to cough and hack. He looked up. "What's your deal, you jerk?" Madara continued to look down on Sasuke with discontent. Sasuke felt a shiver go down his spine as he looked up at him. "Naruto, what's gotten into you today?" "This is shameful," Madara said. Sasuke cracked a smirk. What's with that voice? Puberty hit you like a truck. Madara didn't smile. Sasuke felt that this was all business. He put his hand out. Don't be a dick, pull me up. Madara extended out his hand to Sasuke's grip. Sasuke's smile slowly began to fade as he felt pressure being applied. Looking into what he took to be Naruto's eyes, he saw a flame in them that did not bode well for him. With a yank and a jerk, Sasuke was pulled from the water and sent flying, landing in the grass by the bank of the lake. He opened his eyes to see Naruto walking in his direction. Sasuke stood. Fine, you want to fight? I'll give you one. As Madara continued to pace closer to Sasuke, he stopped and crossed his arms. Well, if you're so confident, then please, by all means, I'll give you the first shot. Sasuke, now caught between the physical assault and the challenge to his honor, began to rush at Madara. He attempted to kick him in the side of the head, only for Madara to effortlessly catch with his left wrist. Sasuke then attempted to punch with his right hand. The strike hit Madara right in the hard part of his skull, causing Sasuke to recoil in pain as his knuckles began to bleed. Madara threw the boy down. Impressive, using your limber nature to attack in more ways than your opponent can dodge. Maybe I misjudged you a bit. You think outside the box, not too unlike me, I suppose. Your biggest error, though, is believing that you can strike anything and not be hurt by your own recoil. Sasuke, laying there, looked back, confused as to how this could be the same Naruto as before. Why are you doing this, Naruto? Sasuke demanded. Madara knelt down in front of Sasuke and spoke. I don't really think a long-winded explanation of my motives would do you any good. Now show me what you've got. Everything. Do not hold back or you will die. Frankly, even if Sasuke didn't hold back, he would die. His death was already a foregone conclusion, but Madara knew that when he took the Sharingan, the base dojutsu needed to be activated. If it wasn't, he doubted he'd be able to activate it on his own. He needed Sasuke giving his all if he wanted to take what was his. My best, Sasuke demanded. Show me the eyes that set you above everyone else. I haven't awakened my Sharingan yet, Sasuke said. Madara scoffed. Yes, you have. You awakened them when Itachi slew your parents before your very eyes. I want to see what you have. If you can't beat me at your best, do you think you'll ever be able to beat Itachi? Sasuke pointed his finger in Madara's face. Don't you ever use that name, Naruto. I'm warning you. Madara smiled. Warning me about what? That you'll get mad. That you will retaliate out of anger. Try to kill me. That's exactly what I want from you, Sasuke. I want you to try your damnedest to splatter me. Use my blood to tint this beautiful blue water to a cherry red. Madara grew closer to Sasuke. Prove that Itachi didn't waste his time by leaving you alone. Sasuke roared, kicking Madara away with all of his strength. Madara went rolling and stopped. He looked forward. A single tomoe in one, a double in the other. Yes, a fledgling dojutsu, but they will suffice for now. You made a mistake, Naruto, and now I'm gonna make sure you don't eat solid food for a month. Sasuke rushed forward, running with his arms behind him. With every step he took, Madara realized just how sloppy Sasuke was. This peaceful era has made you soft. It's disgusting, Madara said as he caught Sasuke's kicks. What the hell are you on about? Sasuke demanded. Sasuke kept up the pressure. He attempted to discombobulate Madara with a set of ear slaps, but Madara caught the arms and snapped the wrists, causing Sasuke to scream in pain. Madara gripped him by the throat and smashed him to the ground before dragging him across the grass. Throwing him to the shore, he began to choke Sasuke, pushing his head below the water. Sasuke gagged and screamed. As Madara did this, he took his hand and pressed it to his Sharingan. Muffled screams echoing through bubbles were all Sasuke could produce as his Sharingan were removed from his head. Gasping in shock, Sasuke inhaled a lungful of water, choking before passing out. Leaving the boy unconscious in the water to die, Madara looked at the newly acquired Sharingan. Madara let off a smile before proceeding to discard the same blue eyes he had seen in the mirror earlier. He let them sink to the bottom of the lake as he replaced them with the crimson eyes. Placing them in, he opened his eyes as a bit of blood bubbled up and dripped from below his bottom lids. He pressed his palms to his eyes and used a bit of a healing technique he had picked up to ease the pain and speed up recovery time. It felt good to finally be able to see with the same reaction time as before. As he pondered the Sharingan, he began to finally understand why the Hyuga often placed seals on the foreheads of their members. It kept others from stealing their dojutsu. How prudent. All the same, he never would have done that himself. After all, he viewed it as a sign of weakness. No, if there was someone stronger out there who wanted his eyes, he implored them to challenge him for them. After all, to the victor go the spoils. Nobody had a right to anything, even if they were born with it. If they desired to keep what was theirs, then they had to have the strength to fight for it. Sasuke lost to one greater than him. That was his mistake. Madara would not lose to anyone ever again, and these eyes were going to be the seal he put on that promise. Walking over to Sasuke, he pilfered his body for whatever was on him, including a few ryo and a set of keys. "This should be useful," he said as he turned and began to walk away. Dripping wet from the fight, he passed through the streets. "Now, let's see what you have in your apartment, Sasuke." Madara came to the apartment door and opened it. Once he stepped inside. "This apartment smells much better than the one I woke up in. Well kept. I suppose that's another trait from me," he said. Stepping to the closet here, he opened the door. Inside, he found something more his style. A dark, long-sleeved shirt not too unlike a kimono. On the back was the crest of the Uchiha. Looking into the inside of the shirt, he found the tag. The size was the same as what Naruto wore, so that meant it would fit him perfectly well. Taking these, he went to the bathroom and proceeded to clean up from the fight. As he looked at himself in the mirror, the golden hair of this boy began to offend him. So he found a can of black hair dye and proceeded to do just that. Dye the hair black. There. That's much better. Inside of him, he felt the Nine Tails beginning to grow distressed. "I remember you," it said through the growling voice it always had. "I began to wonder why my Jinchuriki suddenly felt like a different person. That's because he is. But the question I have is, how did you do this? I believe you had died, Madara." "Oh, I have, on many occasions. But that isn't your concern right now. All that matters is that I now possess you. You're a slave to my will, and mine alone. Be a good fox, and maybe I'll reward you." Returning to his reality, he looked himself over. Black hair, black clothes, he felt like his old self again. At the same time, he felt like a child playing dress-up. But if anything, he was now making the body out to be what he was in spirit. That being said, this body could use some more training. It was weak in comparison to what he used to be, despite having the potential to surpass everything he once was. Stepping out of the bathroom, he walked toward the windows. He couldn't stay long. Surely the body would soon be found, and when it was, the Konoha police would be here soon. Tying his obi up, he tucked away the scrolls that would contain his items. As he walked to the door to open it, he was shocked to see someone already there, about to knock. Her hair was pink, and she was blushing something fierce. "Sasuke?" she asked as she went to continue some ill-conceived attempt to sway him into loving her. Then she stopped as she realized. "Naruto?" Madara looked at her. "What are you doing in Sasuke's apartment? Wearing Sasuke's clothes? Looking like Sasuke?" She gazed a little deeper. "Where did you get those?" she asked as she looked into his Sharingan, knowing that they used to be owned by the love of her life. "The same place I got everything else." "Your voice, it's so deep. What's going on here? Where's Sasuke?" Madara began to walk away. Sakura called after him. "Naruto!" She ran after him. Slapping him in the back of the head, she spoke. "You better listen to me when I'm talking to you." Madara turned around, grabbed her by the throat, snapped her neck, and threw her over the railing to the ground below. "Can a man not have some peace and quiet?" There were screams of terror as many civilians began to circle around Sakura's remains. Madara simply walked out of the building and began to walk away. As he did so, he began to contemplate how he would train his body to grow stronger quickly. He had some unfinished business with the Akatsuki that he needed to deal with sooner rather than later. Wandering around a bit, he found an old training ground that was just perfect for him. Jumping up on the bars, he began doing pull-ups. 1, 2, 3, 4. He did as many as he could, as slowly and as excruciatingly painful as he could make it. The more pain he felt, the more motivated he grew to keep going. His muscles felt like they might tear. "Good. Keep going," he said as he continued. He was attempting to train until failure. That was the best way to increase his body strength. And the more strength his body had, the more chakra he could call on later. He would need that as well, due to the drain that the Sharingan would have on him. But he was grateful to be an Uzumaki. Their chakra wells were notoriously large, which meant that they were of the few people in this world who could easily hold a Sharingan without dying. He also planned to someday find some of Hashirama Senju's cells to begin to implant within himself. The introduction of Senju genetics would knock the edge off the Sharingan's chakra cost, allowing him to use them almost non-stop with little to no side effects. They would further ensure that his Mangekyou Sharingan never went blind due to the sheer regenerative factor that they came with. Once he had all this stuff, he knew that he'd be ready to retake his currently hijacked plan and make his dreams a reality. He switched to sit-ups. As he did them, he heard a voice. "Naruto?" Madara stopped and hopped down. It was Kakashi. What was he doing here? "What are you doing here, Kakashi-sensei?" Madara asked, as if he didn't already know. "I was just looking for you," Kakashi said. "Considering that Sakura's body was found outside of Sasuke's apartment, and Sasuke's mutilated body was found by the lake, I was beginning to think someone was picking off all of my students for some reason. Now I know. It was you all along." Madara shrugged. "I guess I'm not the only one with a Sharingan, am I?" Kakashi listened to him speak. "You're not Naruto. Who are you?" "I don't really think it matters much. I don't expect you to survive to tell anyone. And what good would it be explaining everything to a dead man? Seems like a waste of effort." Kakashi drew closer. "So tell me, is Naruto still in there?" Kakashi asked. Madara scoffed. "Why do you ask? Because you want to take it easy on me? No. The answer's no. Naruto is no longer of this world. I am all that remains. That should free you from any moral obligations, am I correct? Give me a true fight, Kakashi of the Sharingan Eye." Kakashi, noticing Sasuke's own Sharingan and hearing that there was no advantage to Kakashi hiding his true potential, raised his forehead protector to display his Sharingan. Madara began to systematically pop all of his knuckles. Once he had done this, he crossed his arms, waiting for Kakashi to come at him. "You may have the first move." "Oh, how very gentlemanly of you," Kakashi said as he planned his adversary's death. Kakashi rushed forward with incredible speed that most Sharingan couldn't catch. Madara, with his own lower-tier Sharingan, didn't see him coming until it was too late. He was struck in the side, causing Madara to be launched toward the wall, where he was left stuck in the wall's impression of himself. Madara pulled himself free. "You're fast. I like that. Speed is the element that sets apart good shinobi from great shinobi. You would have done well in the Warring States period." Kakashi began to weave hand signs. Fire style, fireball technique. He summoned a massive ball of fire to burn away his opponent, only for Madara to jump above him before landing on the ground behind. Madara, wielding two kunai, proceeded to spin and strike at Kakashi, attacking him multiple times in hopes that Kakashi wouldn't be able to deal with the speed of the attacks. "So I see that you're a user of fire style ninjutsu. Allow me to show you how a true master uses fire style." Madara then began weaving his own hand signs. "Fire release, great fire destruction." He then let out a massive wall of flames toward Kakashi. Kakashi would weave his own hand signs. "Water release, water formation wall." Then he spits out a wall of water toward Madara. The flames and the water collide, canceling each other out with a massive output of steam. Madara capitalizes on this with fire release, hiding an ash and dust technique. Ash and smoke mixes with the steam, further lowering visibility. Kakashi, even with his Sharingan, cannot peer through the smoke. Madara also can't see, but that's fine. He has experience fighting while being unable to see. He uses his chakra sense to locate Kakashi and sneak up behind him. As he goes to strike Kakashi, Kakashi suddenly disappears with his substitution jutsu. "Huh?" He then hears Kakashi shout from all around him, "Lightning style!" He suddenly sees a multitude of glows around him. Kakashi is using the clone technique to hide his true location while he utilizes Chidori. Seeing all of the Kakashi clones coming towards him at once, Madara jumps up into the air to avoid them. It's only then that he realizes the real Kakashi was hiding on a rooftop and waiting for Madara to jump. Madara can hardly get out of the way and ends up being pierced through his right shoulder. Madara hits the ground and is filled with excruciating pain. The Ninetales, on his command, begins offering him chakra. The wound begins to heal. As Kakashi stands there, he utilizes the water bullet technique to knock down the ash and steam. Upon doing so, he sees Madara standing there again, his body enveloped in a bubbling red chakra, his eyes now transformed into 3 Tomoe Sharingan. "Thank you, Kakashi, for helping me get to this point. I will be growing much stronger from this, and I don't think I would have been able to without your help." Madara smiles and proceeds to rush Kakashi, his speed having increased due to his version 1 cloak. Kakashi attempts to defend himself, but as the strike comes in, Madara vanishes. The body flicker. Before Kakashi can readjust, Madara's hand pierces through his chest. Kakashi looks down at it. He gurgles a bit before Madara pulls his hand back through. Kakashi falls over dead. Madara stands there, looking down at Kakashi. He reaches down and proceeds to pluck the Sharingan from his eye. "This may be useful later," he says as he seals it into one of his scrolls. Madara walks over, finds a towel, and proceeds to wipe the blood from his body the best he can. As he does so, he begins to think about next steps. The thing on his mind the most was the destruction of Obito and Zetsu for betraying him. Then he would have to regather the tailed beasts once again. Madara sat there by a campfire. He had disappeared from Konoha. To a degree, he hoped the village didn't know he still existed. Not that he was afraid of it, but he didn't want them to get in his way. A part of him wished to unleash the Ninetales, destroy that old experiment of Hashirama's, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the last meeting he had with Hashirama. To be frank, Madara didn't exactly hate Hashirama. On the contrary, he loved the man, respected him. There were so very few that could push him to his 100%. Madara wasn't even being conceited. He was simply being a realist, honest with himself and with the rest of the world. Very few people could stand up to a fraction of his power, let alone to his whole power. Hashirama was one of those few. Hashirama and that man. What did they call him? That overly flamboyant man in a green leotard? It honestly did hurt Madara that he'd forgotten the man's name. That man, strange as he was, deserved to be remembered. Perhaps it was for him as well that he didn't destroy the village. It wasn't new to Madara to see a man throw his life away in an attempt to kill him. That happened on a regular basis. Most cases, Madara did not respect it. Why would one respect foolishness from a fool? But there were a few occasions where he did respect someone, and that was if they had somehow beaten him or somehow impeded him. Rarer still if they had somehow matched his power. And that man did. Not only did he match and nearly kill Madara, but he did so in the most flamboyant way possible. Fitting for a man as he was. Looking back, he found another reason to resent Naruto. Naruto, instead of respecting that sacrifice, had sullied it by saving the man's life. The kind of life Madara suspected that the man would live would be a shell of his former life. Likely wheelchair-bound at best, vegetized at worst. That was a disgrace to the sacrifice he made. Maybe one day he and that flamboyant man would meet again, have another duel, and this time the man's sacrifice would actually mean something. Madara poked at the fish he was cooking. It had been quite some time since he'd left the village, and currently they were looking for him, hoping to bring him to justice. Madara had believed that they would assume Naruto dead as well. Who in their right mind would think that a genin of all people as young as he could kill a jonin like Kakashi? One of the most elite shinobi to ever come out of the village. Madara assumed it was due to the unfiltered bias against Naruto that the villagers harbored. That was quite disgusting. To hate a child just because he was the vessel of the fox that nearly destroyed their village. Why Naruto would ever crave their validation, crave to see them well off, Madara did not know. He wasn't sure how much to respect and how much to pity, but regardless, Naruto was no longer here. Instead, it was Madara. Madara was here now, and Madara did not give even half a crap about the village. It still stood because a man he wished to eventually have a rematch with existed there. For that purpose, Madara had been working this new body of his to the bone. It was obvious that the laziness of this vessel's original owner had left it in a state of weakness. Too much pudge. A shinobi should be in all ways efficient, expending nothing more than they have to. Excess weight was a waste of resources. The only things he would allow his body to have were active things, active muscles that pulled more than their weight, and fats that were capable of keeping him alive in harsh conditions, so long as it didn't slow him down. And currently Madara was working on strengthening himself. Any time he found to rest, he instead spent increasing his strength through various intense exercises and training. If this body would be his vessel, then it might as well be a worthy one. And the more his body strengthened, the more his chakra wells expanded. Madara was shocked with how much chakra this body could hold. There was a point where Madara began to wonder if he would have been luckier to have been born an Uzumaki before, but he quelled those thoughts. Regardless of the chakra, the visual prowess of the Sharingan was unmatched. The Hyuga came close, but it was the Sharingan that made the most of the abilities that Madara was looking for. It was far more focused than the Byakugan. The Byakugan offered a wide range of view, a whole 360 degrees of awareness mixed with telescopic vision. But there was no better reaction time than one would normally have. It seemed like a waste of time to Madara. With proper chakra control, one could detect anything around them without the use of their eyes. Madara could beat a Hyuga clan master blind, and that wasn't even a bluff. Madara, with or without his Sharingan, was still above most shinobi, but his Sharingan gave him an edge in combat that solidified his already absolute strength. That being said, Madara had reached a dilemma. As he was washing off his face by the river in preparation for eating his fish, he looked into his own image. That black hair of Naruto's was slowly beginning to fill out, and more he was looking like himself, save the 6 marks across his face like whiskers. But the issue wasn't with these things, but with the Sharingan in his head. He did not yet have access to the Mangekyo Sharingan, and he wasn't quite sure how to awaken it. After fighting in wars for so many years, one's senses dulled to the concept of loss, made making friends hard, and made missing friends even harder. He wasn't sure how he would do this. An old, tried and true method of the Uchiha was to commit the ultimate betrayal of becoming true, close friends with someone and then murdering them when their back was turned. This would spur the hatred to awaken something profound, but Madara wasn't sure how to make this work now. He began to believe that maybe he had been too hasty in killing Sasuke. I should have let him live long enough to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan. Now he's dead. Madara had long since come to understand the truth about the Mangekyo though. It was always about the duality of reality, the nature of love and hate. Love and hate existed on the same spectrum. There was even a theory he posited that strong enough love and conviction could possibly awaken the Mangekyo, though such a thing had never been heard of before. But in this way, it never was the death of someone they loved or guilt that awakened the Mangekyo, but the hatred born from it. The absolute and utter pain and hatred born from any event. All he needed to find was a way to be filled with hatred. As he thought about everything that had happened, he smiled. Maybe it won't be so hard after all. Returning to his campfire, he saw a man sitting there already, poking at the fish. Madara attempted to recognize him. He thought maybe he knew who he was. He wasn't overly familiar, but he believed that he had, in the past or future, served with this man as an Edo Tensei. The man gave off an aura. Madara wasn't sure how to describe it. It was like the eye of a hurricane. An uneasy peace that you knew would soon be interrupted by something that could change your life forever. This filled Madara with unimaginable glee. A true Uchiha. This man brought honor to everything Madara once held up. Strength was absolute. Those who possessed strength had a particular type of personality, one of a steely will, one that would push themselves beyond what the natural man would call limits. There were no such things as physical limits, and just by looking at this man, he knew he had done the hard things. He approached. "Can I help you, stranger?" he said, his unnaturally deep voice for one as young as him betraying his mood with an unintentionally excited flourish at the end. The man looked up at Madara. "I had heard some rumors. I wanted to see if they were true. Now that I look into your eyes, I know they are." Madara felt his fighting spirit rising. This man. Madara recognized him now. He was the brother of Sasuke Uchiha, Itachi. "What rumors do you speak of?" Madara asked, attempting to coax out a negative response. Itachi looked him up and down. "So what's with this getup? Black hair, black clothes, you even bear the sigil of the Uchiha clan on your back, the Sharingan in your head. Do you really want to be an Uchiha that bad?" Madara smiled. "Who said I wasn't an Uchiha?" Itachi thought about it for a moment. "I do, because if you were, you'd be dead." Madara laughed. "And who's to say I'm not?" Itachi's face grew a bit more serious as he began to speak. However, before he could say anything, Madara spoke first. "A ghost. If you want to know what I truly am, Itachi Uchiha, I am a ghost. A ghost of a past from which you descended, and a future you will never see. I am unnatural to this world." Itachi rolled his eyes up for a second and shook his head before reaching down and picking up the fish Madara had been cooking. "I feel bad eating this in front of my teammate, but then again, I surmise he would have already done the same thing." Madara stopped for a moment. Teammate? Was there someone else around? He looked but didn't see anyone. He closed his eyes and began to focus on sensing chakra. Yes, there was another here. A second one, about as strong as Itachi. Madara opened his eyes. "How very kind of you," he said. Itachi looked up at him. "Kind?" Madara nodded. "You told me that you have a friend nearby. You informed me and caused me to sense for him. Now I know that he's here and where he is. Were you planning on using him to attack?" Itachi, biting through fish, spoke again. "No, he's not here to assist me in this fight. This is my personal beef, not his. He's just here to make sure we're not interrupted." Madara smiled. "Oh, so we are going to fight." It was hard to hide his excitement. Itachi put the half-eaten fish down and stood. He popped his knuckles and his neck. "All right, let's get to it. I'd like to reclaim those eyes in your head before it becomes too dark to see." "It's 8 a.m., Madara said. Itachi looked at him with his Mangekyo Sharingan activated and began to bleed in preparation for going all out. "I know," Itachi said. In a moment, he was gone, appearing behind Madara, ready to stab him with a kunai. But there were a few edges that Madara had over Itachi at this moment. First of all, Itachi had made the mistake of informing Madara that there was another shinobi. That had caused Madara to keep his chakra senses open to things he could not see, and right now, that was Itachi. Second of all, because these Sharingan were transplants, that meant they could never shut off, which frankly was alright with Madara. It simply meant that his senses would always be sharper. Currently, his reaction time was permanently at the very least base level Sharingan, which, even though the Mangekyo was faster, Madara was the base template from which Itachi procured all of his skills, which meant that the distance between Mangekyo Sharingan's perception and base Sharingan's perception would be overcome by pure mastery. And that led to the third and final edge. Madara was simply more experienced. Everything Itachi could do, Madara could do better. Though his body had changed, his mind had not, and to a certain degree, the most potent tool in a battle between shinobi was mind. Even if you were the most physically capable shinobi in the world, with the most chakra ever seen, it would mean absolutely nothing if you weren't smarter than your opponent. As Madara dodged the attack, his mind issued a silent challenge. "Let's see which one of us is smarter." Madara jumped back away from Itachi, his grin beckoning the man whose brother he'd killed to follow him. Madara disappeared into the forest. Only his echoing voice could be heard. "How skilled are you at tracking outside of an urban area?" he said. "Can you find one single child amongst the vastness of trees?" Itachi, face uncaring and stoic as ever, simply cast Amaterasu on the forest. Black flames spread and began to eat up the area. Itachi, in this moment, had doomed the entire forest, and the worst part was, he didn't care. Sasuke was the only thing that kept Itachi's heart together. Shattered and broken now, Itachi's heart was of no use to him. There was only one goal: vengeance. And once that was over with, where would he go? What would he do? Would he continue to throw in with the Akatsuki? Would he truly become loyal? Would he leave? He had no idea what kind of life he could live, if any at all. Whether he gained the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan or not was not a part of his desires. He didn't care if he went blind. He just didn't want someone unworthy to carry those eyes. The issue with that logic, though, was the assumption that Madara was unworthy. Madara jumped from tree to tree, dodging the blaze as it spread quicker than a flash. In his head, he dared to question if Itachi were crazy or not. He hoped he was. Itachi was more like Madara than he thought. The level of sacrifice he was willing to endure to reach his goal made him think that Itachi would have been the proper student to indoctrinate as opposed to Obito. Obito was shattered, and he couldn't move past himself to see the bigger picture. It wasn't about the world for Obito, it was purely selfish. Madara sensed that Itachi was one who cared more for the world than for himself. There was a healthy respect for Itachi within Madara, but Madara wasn't about to let that stop him from killing him. On the contrary, Madara saw Itachi as one of the few worthy of fighting him. Madara would never strip him of the honor of dying by his hand. He would jump into the nearest body of water, which turned out to be a small lake from which the nearby river flowed. Landing underwater, he turned around and looked up at the surface as the light of the sun was filtered by blackness of flame. Eventually, the darkness passed by. Madara rose up from the bottom of the lake to find that the trees were now dead and ashen. Coming to the shore, he felt a hand reach down and lift him by the collar of his neck. The uncaring gaze within Itachi's eyes told Madara that he was about to be killed, so Madara did the first thing that came to his mind. That was to gouge his opponent's eyes. As his two splayed fingers approached Itachi's eyes, Itachi raised a hand to grab them. Itachi gripped the hand and pulled it to his side. "You're a fool. You forgot that I have two hands," Madara said as the grip on the hand holding his tightened. He then raised his second hand to gouge Itachi again. Itachi would toss Madara to the ground while still holding his hand. He would then spin in a circle and throw Madara into the nearest tree. Madara laid there for a moment, his hand gripping at his back as he let out a pained groan, like some old man having awakened in the morning to the stiffness in his back. Eventually, he rose to his feet. "You would have done well in the Warring States period. Even my own brother Izuna would not have bested you." Itachi listened. "What are these delusions? You claim yourself to be an Uchiha, to be the brother of Izuna. You make yourself out to be Madara Uchiha." "I am Madara Uchiha." "You lie," Itachi stated. "I knew Madara Uchiha, or a man claiming to be him, and it was not you." Madara scoffed. "That man was merely using my name. He is not Madara Uchiha. I am." "Maybe I would give you the benefit of the doubt if I didn't already know for certain who you were, Naruto," Itachi said. "What a shame," Madara said. "I attempted to cover the identity of my vessel, but it seems I'm cursed to remain known as Naruto for eternity." "Well, that's fine. I made Madara a name the world fears. I can turn the word Naruto into one as well." Madara began to walk closer to Itachi. Itachi was losing his patience. "I will make you suffer 1,000 lifetimes worth of endless pain and misery," he said as he cast Tsukiyomi. Despite him casting his most powerful genjutsu, Madara simply walked right through it. "How is that possible?" Itachi wondered to himself. Itachi grit his teeth. "Screw it. I'll give him my ultimate attack." Suddenly, Itachi formed his Susanoo, a large armored creature of which Itachi stood right in the middle. It carried a sword and a shield. Madara looked at it. "Is this all?" he asked. Itachi was confused yet slighted. Madara began to laugh, forcing a scowl to draw over Itachi's face. Madara finished his laugh and then began to explain. "The power of the Susanoo is lost on you. This is hardly more than its weakest form. It's no more than an armored shell. I suppose it can't be helped though. The practice it takes to go further than this requires time, which the standard Mangekyo Sharingan does not possess. The true power of the Sharingan is the power of bonds, my friend. The loss of bonds awakens the Mangekyo, and only by continuing to push through the loss of closer and closer bonds does your true Mangekyo awaken. But then again, I surmise you know this. You desire my Sharingan, don't you? By taking them, you will awaken the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. So take them from me. Take them and you will gain unimaginable power, but only if you prove yourself worthy." Itachi stood there in his Susanoo and looked down. "I'm not worthy of those eyes. I never have been. But all that being said, I won't let you use them freely. I don't need those eyes. I simply need you to die." The Susanoo then took its sword and stabbed it into Madara to begin the sealing process. Madara had made a miscalculation. He had assumed Itachi would want to reclaim the eyes, but no, he wasn't like Madara. There was something fundamentally different about Itachi that made him so unlike Madara that he would sacrifice his own eyesight and stunt his own power. Madara, panicking, had no idea what to do. As Itachi saw Madara being pulled into the gourd, he let out a sigh. With the battle over and the murderer of his brother sealed, Itachi dropped out of his Susanoo. His eyes bleeding, he could hardly see at all. He let out a cough, blood dripping from his mouth as he wheezed. He knelt down to catch his breath. Certainly, he had just shaved at least a year off of his life, perhaps more. His body was in such bad shape, Itachi wondered if today might be the day he died. It was then that he felt a hand grip his shoulder and a blade push into his back, piercing his heart from behind. As the blade was twisted and ripped out, Itachi fell forward with a violent expulsion of blood. He turned around and saw Madara standing there above him. One of his eyes was a ghostly white, no longer bearing the vibrant red iris or the tomoe that defined it as a Sharingan. Madara stepped forward and straddled Itachi, kneeling over him.
I'll admit, you almost got me. It's been a long time since anyone has pushed me that far in battle. I misjudged you, Itachi. I thought you were like me, and I assumed you would do everything I would do. That was my mistake. As it turns out, you are not like me. You're a sad, lonely, miserable man with no goal in life besides feeling sorry for yourself. Your strength is admirable. It's too bad it's wasted on someone like you.
At about that point, Itachi died, no more blood reaching his brain, blood starting to bubble up out of the wound. Maybe he wasn't brain dead yet, but he was well on his way, and pretty much nothing would stop that now. Kneeling over his body, Madara inspected the Sharingan.
Mangekyo, I could use those.
Closely inspecting them, he let out a sigh.
Almost blind. Probably not even worth the effort, but I suppose I'll take them anyway.
He extracted them and sealed them away in a scroll. As he did so, he looked up and saw another man dressed in the cloak of the Akatsuki. He saw the marked-out headband of the mist, and on his shoulder he carried the blade Samehada. The two stared at each other for quite some time. Kisame seemed to display a bit of distress, confusion, and shock due to seeing how this child had killed Itachi, one of the toughest Akatsuki members. That did not mean that Kisame feared Madara by any means. It simply meant that he didn't expect that to happen.
You killed my partner. That's grounds for me to inherit his grudge.
Madara unrolled a scroll and pulled from it a hand scythe. From the bottom of that scythe extended a chain with a sharpened kunai at the other end. Kisame unsheathed Samehada.
Swim home, fishy. You don't want this, he said.
You underestimate me, he asked.
No, I estimate you perfectly. You do not possess a Sharingan.
You believe your precious Sharingan gives you an immutable advantage, Kisame said? How such a fool could defeat Itachi, I'll never know.
That's the same I say of you, Madara said. Go home before I decide you're worth killing.
Kisame pointed the blade forward. It growled and barked at Madara like a rabid animal.
I think I would rather let my blade feast on your chakra.
Kisame had the advantage here, and he knew it too. The reason being that he was near a water source. That water would allow him to utilize water-style ninjutsu easily and with less chakra cost. Kisame pressed the attack, swinging his blade, hoping to connect and steal more chakra from Madara. Madara, stepping back out on the water, was followed by Kisame. As the blade went in, Madara blocked it with his hand scythe while swinging the chain. He let fly the kunai toward Kisame's face, causing Kisame to dodge left to avoid it. Keeping his momentum going, he reached his hand down and pressed it against the water before flipping his feet around for a leg sweep that pressed Madara back. Madara jumped away and then spoke.
Is this truly it? Is this the technique that you thought would give you enough advantage to defeat Itachi? Don't be ridiculous.
He chuckled. Kisame smiled, showing more of his carnivorous teeth.
Oh, trust me, we're not anywhere near finished yet.
Kisame straps his blade to his back and begins to weave hand signs.
Water release, great exploding water colliding wave.
Suddenly he forms water in his mouth and collides it with the water in the lake, causing it to rise up into the air. As that happens, he weaves more hand signs.
Water prison shark dance technique.
Suddenly the water around them forms into a giant bubble, resembling a tiny droplet, held together by surface tension on a grand scale. Madara is caught up in the water bubble. It's then that Kisame fuses with his blade, Samehada, granting him more shark-like traits, including the ability to breathe underwater.
I was born for this, boy, Kisame said. So long as you're my prisoner by my own desire, you'll never taste the air again. I don't care how strong you are, all humans require air, even Itachi, even Susanoo users.
Madara begins to choke and tries to swim toward the surface of the water, but as he does, Kisame swims up next to him.
What's the matter? Are you tired of swimming already? And to think I made this pool specially for you.
Madara realizes that Kisame will always be the center of this pool, so as long as Kisame swims next to him, he'll never get out. Madara knew that there was no way he could outswim Kisame, who was now part shark. He needed to do something else. Not seeing any other way out, he opened his shirt and proceeded to open the seal on his stomach. The cage where Kurama was being stored was slowly opening as the reflection of a Sharingan lighted in its eye. The subconscious Madara stood there, hands forming a half ram sign. "Be a good boy," he said. At that moment, the water around Madara began to boil as the chakra grew thicker and thicker. Eventually, he went from version 1 to version 2. Going deeper, more tails began to form as even bones appeared. Kisame was shocked. "This boy is the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki?" Kisame and Itachi had yet to receive orders to bring him in, so they did not know who he was. Not until now. It was here that Kisame began to believe that this was a fatal mistake he had made. As muscle formed, flesh and fur grew over the sinew. The full nine-tailed demon fox appeared in all of its terror. He opened its mouth. A muffled roar exited that reverberated through the water. It then began to form a tailed beast ball in its mouth. Kisame saw it and knew what it meant. He began taking evasive maneuvers. This was quite the conundrum. His technique required him to remain close to his target or they would escape. But now he knew he couldn't get that close without being harmed. The tailed beast ball rushed from its mouth and flew through the water. Kisame barely dodged it, though the mass and speed at which it moved displaced a lot of water and pulled him into its trail against his will. Suddenly, a claw reached out to slice him. Kisame pushed back to escape it, but felt his legs ripped off by the claws that he could not escape from. There was now blood in the water. Despite that, Kisame didn't give up. He used the blood as a smokescreen, likening it to the ink of a squid. At this point, Kisame knew he had to finish off the Nine-Tails as soon as he could, because there was no way he'd be able to escape on foot. Not anymore, and he needed to quickly staunch the bleeding. He began to swim around the Nine-Tails. Despite the dangerous nature of this, he knew that his best chance right now was to simply outlast the beast in a battle of attrition. He needed to ensure that the Nine-Tails drowned before Kisame himself bled out. As Kisame continued to circle, he noticed it charging another tailed beast ball. "There's no way it can see or even sense me. This entire body of water is filled with my chakra," Kisame thought to himself. "There's no way it'll hit me." For that purpose, Kisame decided to hover behind the Nine-Tails for a moment, hoping that the current made by the ball's movement wouldn't suck him back in. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of firing at Kisame, it instead fired the ball down at the ground. As soon as the ball collided with the ground, it released a blast about as powerful as a small nuclear warhead. The water displacement and vacuum left behind overpowered the surface tension created by Kisame's chakra, causing the bubble to rupture, exploding to pieces. Kisame was launched out of the bubble, into the air, the Nine-Tails below finally able to get a gasp of oxygen. Kisame flew quite a distance before falling from the sky, striking every charred branch of the trees left by Amaterasu. Hitting the ground, he laid there. He wasn't entirely sure how long he was out, but when he opened his eyes, he knew it must have been quite some time, as Madara was now sitting upon his chest holding his hand scythe. Kisame looked at Madara. "I underestimated you," Kisame said. "For that, I deserve the fate I'm given." Madara sat there for a moment and looked at him. "Let me ask you, do you know a man among your group who wears a swirling mask?" Kisame didn't say anything. Despite his death being clear, he refused to give up any information, and Madara knew that. "No need to tell me. I know you do. I have a message I want you to deliver for me. Tell that masked man that the real Madara Uchiha has returned to life and is looking for him." Madara then got off Kisame and began to walk away. All the while, Kisame watched with awe at the boy who dared carry the name of the ghost of the Uchiha. Who was he? How could he do this? What were those Sharingan? He couldn't be sure that it was the real Madara, as the man that the boy spoke of considered himself to be Madara. All the same, Kisame felt as though he was required to tell the masked man about this, because if he didn't, things were going to go south very quickly. Eventually, Kisame was picked up alongside the body of Itachi. Pain stood nearby to Kisame as he was tended to. His legs were being replaced with Zetsu flesh, not unlike that used by Obito. What happened out there? Pain demanded to know. In the corner of the room, Obito stood propped against the wall listening. Despite being out of sight, Kisame could smell his presence. "There was a boy. A very powerful boy. He killed Itachi. I can't be sure how he did it, but he did. His hair was black. He had Sharingan, and he wore the crest of the Uchiha on his back. When I faced him, he was a beast of a warrior, something I've never seen any mere genin become. And when I finally thought I had him pinned, he unleashed the Nine-Tails and proceeded to just destroy me." This boy was the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. I had heard that the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki was killed. It can't have been him, Conan said nearby. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki is blonde and an Uzumaki. He's not an Uchiha. If they're not the same person, then who was this new Jinchuriki, Pain asked. Pain sat up so he could see Obito. Obito's eye met Kisame's through the mask. Kisame seemed to have a sarcastic, sadistic smile on his face. He said his name was Madara Uchiha. Pain and Conan were confused. Kisame then looked at them and spoke. Yes, you heard me right. In fact, he didn't just call himself Madara, he said he was the real Madara Uchiha. Pain and Conan looked to Obito. Obito spoke. Plenty of people will try and take my name for intimidation factors. Will you take the word of a small child over mine? That reminds me, Kisame said. The boy talked about you. Obito was confused for a moment. Me? Kisame nodded. He wanted me to deliver you a message. He said to tell you that he's coming for you. And he didn't seem happy. Obito scoffed. Let him come. I'm not afraid of a tiny child. You should be, Kisame said. That boy may have just been a kid, but he was far from a child. Taking down Itachi's no easy feat. Even you would have struggled, I think. Don't underestimate him, Madara. It would be a fatal mistake if you do. Pain put his hand on Kisame's shoulder. Lay back and rest. Pain looked at Obito with suspicion. Obito pushed off the wall and turned around to begin to walk out. As he did, Black Zetsu appeared beside him. Tell me, Zetsu, is that boy truly the rebirth of your master? I am unsure, Zetsu said. I have not seen him. If he was, why would he be upset with me? Obito asked. I do not know. As far as I have known, you haven't deviated from your predetermined path. Obito nodded in understanding. In truth, Obito had deviated, but in ways that nobody could have known. Most of it was in regards of not desiring to revive Madara, which nobody to this point knew of save Obito himself. He looked to Zetsu. Check it out for me. See if it's true. If it truly is your master, offer an olive branch for me. I have no reason to have drawn his ire. And if it isn't our master, Black Zetsu asked. Obito looked at him through the single hole in his mask. If it isn't Madara, then bring him in. We need the Nine-Tails. Zetsu nodded and then disappeared into the ground. Obito walked to the window and gazed out at the rain falling upon the cityscape. If it truly were Madara, Zetsu would know, and that would throw a wrench into his plans. Black Zetsu moved toward Madara, appearing behind the boy and slowly approaching his camp from behind, which also happened to luckily be downwind. As he drew closer, he heard a familiar voice speak. Zetsu, executor of my will. Zetsu was confused. You're not Madara, the Zetsu said as the boy turned around to face him. You're Naruto. Madara shook his head. You know who I am. The voice sounds like Madara's, Zetsu said. Zetsu was completely shocked by all of this. He was beginning to question everything now. He could sense within the boy the chakra of Indra and Ashura. Zetsu couldn't explain it, but somehow this boy truly was Madara. He walked over to the camp. Master, how is that possible? Black Zetsu asked. Please, join me, Zetsu, he said as he continued to eat. I would offer you some, but I know your kind need not eat. How is this possible? Zetsu asked again. Madara spoke. Imagine a strange jutsu, a usage of the 6 paths I had yet to discover. Zetsu knew about as much as there was to know about the 6 paths. He did not recall any power like this. But wait, could this be a karma seal? Was it possible that somehow Madara had formed a karma seal and placed it into someone and transferred his essence? Master, if you had returned, then why did you not send for me sooner? Why did you kill Itachi, maim Kisame, and threaten your pupil? Threaten? Madara asked. I never threatened. I called out to you. Itachi attempted to kill me of his own free will for my part in the murder of his brother. I had to kill him. And though I told Kisame to go home, he still attempted to attack me, so I took from him his legs and his pride. My message was never designed to be a threat. Zetsu's shoulders dropped. A smile crept across his lips. It's good to see you again, Master. I will escort you. Shall we head out in the morning? Madara shook his head. No. I crave to return to work as soon as possible. Let us head out now. Zetsu stood. If that's your wish, I will lead you. Madara extended his hand. Zetsu grabbed it to help the boy to his feet. As he went to let go of the hand though, Madara's grip tightened. Zetsu looked at the hand and then at Madara. Master? Madara looked at Zetsu and sighed. Oh, Zetsu, I have to admit, I never anticipated you to be a traitor. I believed that I'd created you. But you had been with me for a long time, hadn't you? Working to revive your mother. Zetsu's eyes widened and he began to pull away. What are you talking about? Don't try to lie to me. I know about you and your mother, Kaguya Otsutsuki. I know of Obito's plot to betray me. I've been surrounded by nothing but traitors. It's time I fix that. Zetsu tried to pull away in terror, knowing Madara had found him out, but the rage in Madara's heart gave his grip a supernatural strength. Suddenly, Madara's right eye formed into Itachi's Mangekyou Sharingan. From within, he cast a Matarasu. The black flames touched Zetsu as he cried out in agony. Madara held his hand tightly until Zetsu was almost entirely covered. Madara would then proceed to cast Amaterasu again to increase the flames. He didn't want even a speck of Zetsu escaping. He would not be betrayed by this lowly beast again.
Burn away, Zetsu. Burn to ash. Burn to nothingness and take the will of your mother with you.
Zetsu let out one last cry, his voice screaming out, "Mother Kaguya!" before his body turned to ash. To be absolutely sure he had finished Zetsu off, Madara used Amaterasu once more to set the entire field ablaze. He sat there and growled in anger. His right Mangekyo he had taken from Itachi was now blinded. Pulling it free from his head, he looked at it for a moment before tossing it into the flames alongside Zetsu's ashes.
I'm finished with you, Zetsu, but I'm not finished with Obito. I will find him, and when I do, he'll wish he died that day in the cave.
Obito sat in his chair in the mountain's graveyard, a throne inherited. This once had been the throne that Madara Uchiha had sat on. As he sat there, he reflected on things. The sudden and likely permanent disappearance of Black Zetsu told Obito the truth. Madara had killed him. Why would Madara do such a thing? Black Zetsu was the embodiment of his own will, and now he was coming for Obito as well. What could Obito and Zetsu have done to incur his wrath like this? As Obito thought about it, the time they were supposed to revive Madara had not yet come. There was no betrayal yet. Not that Obito wasn't eventually going to betray Madara. Obito knew that he had no plan to revive that old crow, but who in their right mind would believe he would? Madara had left behind plenty of failsafes for just that occasion. A seal on Obito's heart to ensure that he couldn't absorb the Ten Tails, as well as Zetsu himself. Obito had plans to get around these things, but as it was, these things were still standing, so it made no logical sense why Madara would be doing these things. It would be like sabotaging his own dream, like sabotaging his own revival. Perhaps that wasn't really Madara. After all, they were only able to go off what Kisame had said, and Kisame was merely repeating what the boy he fought had said. It was possible that this was really that Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, the son of the 4th Hokage, Naruto Uzumaki. Perhaps the Nine-Tails had driven him insane. Perhaps he'd begun experiencing an obsession with the Uchiha and simply needed to be one. It wasn't something that Obito had never seen happen. Between Shin Uchiha, the self-proclaimed Uchiha by the way, as well as all those who stole the Sharingan for personal use, such as the case of Danzo Shimura, there were plenty of demented individuals who idolized the clan so much that they would pretend to be a member of it. Looking down at his own hand, he began to question why anyone would want to be associated with such a stupid clan anyway. The only good thing to come out of the Uchiha clan were its eyes. That was where it ended. Nothing but pain, suffering, and futility. That's what Madara had once said in regards to the world and its systems. But if that's all the world was, and the Uchiha were at the center of it, then that made the Uchiha the embodiment of that system. If the world was pure hatred and the Uchiha were constantly under the curse of hatred, did that not make them the root of the problem? The very fact Obito's heart was so callous and cold right now, to the point that he had personally assisted Itachi in destroying the Uchiha clan that night, it was all brought on by the fact that the Uchiha were so vile. Perhaps Obito was vile as well for doing what he had been doing, but his range for caring about justice stopped just short of himself. Maybe he was the worst of the Uchiha. Perhaps he was true scum. Obito did not care. Scum or not, he would be happy. He'd be happy scum, and that was better than being dead scum. In the end, the heroes were the ones who wrote the history books, and Obito was already planning his first drafts. As he sat there, Obito thought about it. It didn't much matter if this kid was really Madara or not. He was a threat to him, and he wouldn't simply roll over and die. Considering that this boy had not only killed Itachi but maimed Kisame, two of the stronger members of the Akatsuki, it told Obito that this boy was not to be trifled with. And even if he wasn't really Madara, Obito would have no choice but to treat him like it. After all, it was better to be safe than sorry. To that end, Obito rose to his feet. He walked a little deeper into his underground fortress. This was where he found the massive lotus from which the Geto statue had once rested before the start of the current plan's execution. It seemed like an unusual item to be left sitting in water in an otherwise empty room. The issue with that train of thought was in believing that it was an empty room. In fact, what was seen was actually quite small compared to what was unseen. Below the surface of the water were roots and vines that extended down for quite some distance, and attached to these vines were tiny pod-like things that within contained a human-like body. The perfect mixture of the Geto statue and Hashirama Senju's cells. Perfect clones. Each one a real, tangible person, not reliant upon the chakra of any one person. They developed their own chakra. The substance that they were made of wasn't far removed from Obito himself, who was half Zetsu by comparison. Looking down into the water, he wondered how many of them he might need to stop Madara. He thought about it. All of them. If this boy dares claim the name of Madara, then I'll treat him as I would my old master. There's no such thing as overkill. Slowly, each of the clones began to wake up. As they started to rise out of the water, Obito knew his chances were starting to look good. But alas, something was missing here. There was one last thing he needed to seal the deal on what would be considered his perfect overkill. Madara Uchiha was closing in on the mountain's graveyard. He knew that Obito could go or be anywhere. He'd been preparing for this fight. He had the one thing that could be considered Obito's kryptonite. He possessed his other Mangekyo Sharingan. In his one socket, he had Sasuke's Sharingan, and in his other, he had Kakashi's Sharingan, the latter giving him access to Kamui, which was Obito's whole gimmick. There wasn't going to be any stopping him now. It was true that this was a long-range Kamui compared to a short-range one, but this hardly bothered Madara, as he had come to realize very quickly that there was a way to transform the long-range into short-range. It was how he got to the Kamui dimension in the first place to stop Obito from having his Rinnegan destroyed. That would be more than enough for Madara to stand a chance against Obito. Honestly, it almost felt unfair hijacking the one thing Obito could use to protect himself against him, but this wasn't a time to be playing games. Madara wanted to go in, make him squirm a little, kill him, and be done with it. Bring the world peace, joy, and happiness. As he rounded the top of the hill to look into the valley that led to his old home, he saw what could have been 100,000 Zetsu waiting for him. They all looked up to see Madara and pointed at him. They let out a battle cry and began to rush forward. Looking down on them from his elevated position, he scoffed. Fodder. Well, it was fodder to him, but not to others. Still, it sucked that Obito had just commanded his own army to attack him. There would need to be amendments to the plans now that he no longer had access to this army. Oh well, there's no use crying over spilt milk, Madara said as he began walking down the hill. Opening his scrolls, he summoned forth more weapons. A long scythe, not too unlike the one he had so many years ago, as well as a gunbai fan. Looking at the gunbai, he noted that it was not the one he so loved, but considering that he had grown used to using this type of object in battle, he felt he should replace it until he could have it back. In the time he had taken preparing for these fights, he came to realize that a gunbai was a near-perfect tool for war. It was both a club and a shield. He could always wield two weapons without sacrificing any defense that a shield offered him. He wanted to bring his A-game, especially considering his body. He'd be conceited by thinking himself invincible in this body. No, he was far from it, but that simply added to the challenge. It had been a long time since anyone could match him, and now that he was in a weakened state, almost everyone had a chance at beating him, which made things all the more exciting. War had not been this fun since his many attempts at ending the Leaf all of those years ago. And just like then, he had the Ninetales at his disposal. Reflecting on the fact that he was the Ninetales Jinchuriki, Madara began to think that maybe he was a lot stronger than he gave himself credit for. Rushing down into the massive Zetsu, his face lighted with a laugh at the ecstasy of battle. The Zetsu he faced were all plant-based, and his scythe was the tool of a farmer. It always had been, since days of antiquity. But then again, were not all of a shinobi's primary weapons tools of a trade? Even the kunai had once been a hand trowel, or to cut masonry. It was always important to remember from where one came, and right now Madara was reflecting on how good of an agricultural artist he was. His scythe moved about, cutting the Zetsu as if he were cutting grass or harvesting wheat. Bisected, they fell, their bodies hitting the ground. When they finally adjusted to the flow of battle, they launched a counter-assault, to which Madara would then switch to the use of his gunbai to protect himself. He would pull that gunbai and catch incoming strikes before dishing out worse, caving in skulls with the edge of his blunt instrument, splitting heads, traumatizing brains to the point of failure. The air was filled with the mist of blood, or whatever that substance that transferred nutrients and other things throughout Zetsu bodies was. But again, the Zetsu adapted. His Sharingan began to quickly dash from one enemy to the next, taking in as much information as possible. It was as if time had slowed down for him. His body moved slow, his enemies moved slow. He was given time to think and react. 12 different enemies were coming in at near the same time, with only a few fractions of a second difference. Zetsu were not fearful creatures. They had high regeneration and were developed by him. They did not care if they died. Madara chopped, he sliced and clobbered. Despite their lack of fear, most Zetsu began to pull back to rethink their strategies. As the last Zetsu came in, Madara reversed the bend of its knees with his gunbai, having it kneel before him in a grotesque way, as if somehow reminding it or affirming to himself that he was its master. Pushing its head back on its neck, he sliced open its throat with a kunai, letting the blood spray into the air and rain down upon them. And though Madara was more sophisticated than the urges that surged through his body, he also didn't deny their existence. Right now was a time to put away sophistication and indulge in self-satisfaction, and that's exactly what Madara felt. Bathed in the life force of his enemies, he was like a vampire, devouring not blood but entire lives as sacrifice to his ego. Pushing the Zetsu back to the ground, he looked at the other Zetsu, his heart screaming out through the words he spoke to them.
Challenge me! Destroy me! Bring me all that you have and sacrifice your lives to me.
The Zetsu, having reformulated a plan, realized that no matter how fast he was not quicker than instant. They attacked him all at once. They were sure that this would be enough. They were wrong. Piling on him, they did not see him open the seal. Suddenly, with a roar and a puff of smoke and light, the Nine-Tails appeared. It began to swing its claws, paws, and other appendages about at the Zetsu. The white figures began to fly around, eviscerated, ripped apart, or merely ejected by its sheer might. All the same, many Zetsu found themselves climbing up the Nine-Tails to its back where Madara was. More than a weapon, the Nine-Tails was a new battlefield, an uneven hill to which Madara gained the advantage. It slowed the Zetsu advance just enough for Madara to be capable of withstanding each and every blow from them. No matter how many there were, Madara was an army to himself, a mighty nation that none could overthrow. He was the Uchiha, the sole heir of their legacy, the proprietor of their legend. He was the ghost of the Uchiha, and a ghost was unkillable. As the air settled down, so too did the bloody mist. At the feet of the Nine-Tails, the bodies of countless thousands of Zetsu rested. The Nine-Tails howled towards the rising moon as Madara himself let out a primal battle cry. There were no words to explain the ecstasy he felt, the pure joy and rapture. It was as if he knew for a fact what he was born for and was currently in the middle of it. The Nine-Tails lowered its head in the form of a bow, allowing its master to easily touch ground. Snapping his fingers, the seal closed and the Nine-Tails re-entered his body. Madara began to walk into the mountain's graveyard now, entering the cave he knew so well. As he came to the opening, his hand sliding across stone, he stopped and tapped his knuckles to it, letting out an audible sound. "Knock, knock," he said as he entered the room to see the figure of a man wearing a black cloak with red clouds, sitting upon a throne wearing an orange swirl of a face mask.
My, you look different, yet still the same familiar boy I always knew, Madara said.
"Welcome home, master. It's fitting. This was where you died last, and it will be where you die again."
"Oh, so you finally caught on," Madara said. "I'm not here to spread mercy, love, or forgiveness to you, Obito. I'm here to reclaim what's mine."
Obito then thought for a moment. "You certainly do sound like my master, but something doesn't make sense to me. Tell me, why did you begin this little crusade of yours? Did I do something to offend you?"
"Not yet," Madara said.
"Oh, so you think I will do something? Doesn't that seem unfair to you?" Madara chuckled.
"Oh, how foolish. I suppose I can't blame you. You do not grasp time the way that I do. The things I've seen, what has yet to happen for you is in my distant past. Every action has a reaction, a relationship that cannot be immuted. I've experienced the consequences of my actions, of your actions, and now I plan to eradicate you here and now before you have a chance to do the things we both know you want to do."
Obito sat forward. "So it is you. I never told anyone about your ideas on reality. So tell me, how did you experience the future? Time travel? How did you return to the past? Why choose here and now? Why not go back and watch Hashirama kill himself? Was that not your greatest failure, not letting him end his own life? If you had, do you think anyone would have stopped you?" Madara stood there for a moment.
"That would have been preferable, but then again, I didn't just get to decide how time travel worked. It just did, and I'm not going to question it. Just like I'm not going to question why you betrayed me. It's just like you're not going to further question why I'm going to kill you here. I want your everything, Obito. Absolutely everything. Defeat me. Your life depends on it."
Obito rose from his usurped throne. He dropped his own impression of Madara for his natural voice. "Fine then. Let's see what you can do with a body you're not familiar with." Obito pulled out his inherited scythe and gunbai. As they stood there, time seemed to drag on forever as they began calculating strikes, assuming tactics that would be used in retaliation. They were playing a game of chess in their head, with each different possible attack being gauged by likelihood and percentages. Math, instinct, assumption, everything that made up a human being's ability to rationalize was at use here, and in a moment, the strategizing time was over. Both flinched at the same time, their bodies releasing adrenaline to boost awareness and strength while dulling pain receptors and expectation. Sweat built up a thin layer on their skin as their bodies worked in overdrive. The two gunbai clashed. Pushing off of each other, Obito spoke. Your strength is outstanding. Despite your body, you don't seem to have lost an edge.
Uzumaki are rather powerful, and with the 9 tails added on top of it, anything that separated me from myself is slowly vanishing.
Obito grinned, though little beyond simply a shift in the only visible eye he was showing could prove it. They went in to strike again, their blades clashing. The sound of sharp metal cleaving the air at inhuman speeds could be heard, matching the loud clanking of gunbai and scythes. Obito was in every way imaginable Madara's body double. Madara had done so well in bringing him up to be his second that the two were barely capable of being told apart. One might have said by now that they were one and the same, but the differences that distinguished the two were glaring to Madara. Obito was a self-pitying loser. The only thing about him that Madara admired was his drive and ambition that increased his strength. But while Obito bogged himself down in depression due to what he had lost, Madara was moving forward with a smile on his face. The difference between Obito and Madara were their intentions. Madara was selfless in his actions. Everything he did was for the rest of the world. Madara was happier than a pig in mud to continue warring, but he knew that the rest of the world deserved to be free of monsters like himself. That's why his own personal world he planned to create would be one of never-ending war. His own world of never-ending strife, filled with the adrenaline of battle, the thrill of war, and the sound of crunching bones. The others' worlds could be whatever they desired as well, gently tipped in their favor so as to become whatever they secretly wanted deep down. Obito, on the other hand, was only in it for himself. Why else had he betrayed him? Madara, at that time, gave over to the idea of Obito running the show until Obito tried to throw it all away. The reason for that was because it was never about Madara and what he had. The same should have been true of Obito. Obito should have brought Madara back if for no other reason than to increase his chances of success. No, Obito was still obsessed with that girl. Obito and that girl were the worst thing he'd ever done. Not because it was evil, but because it took a somewhat serviceable servant and ruined him. But then again, maybe that wasn't Madara's fault. Chances were Obito was just trash to begin with. He was always behind that Hatake boy, was always throwing temper tantrums. Nothing had changed. Obito was still that same boy he was then, having never grown up. Obito to this day was still just a little boy. A little boy in a grown man's body. That was ironic when Madara considered himself to be a grown man in a little boy's body. To a degree, this made Obito and Madara the yin to each other's yang. The same thing together, yet distinct. The more the two clashed, the more it became apparent that Obito was a challenger worth the effort. As he stepped back, breathing deeply, Madara spoke.
Perhaps you're not as useless as I once believed you to be. Your strength is impressive. You've taken my lessons to heart and improved upon them. For that, I commend you, but your end is at hand.
You may think so, Obito said, but your end came many, many years ago. You were the ghost of the Uchiha for a reason. Your time has come and gone many times. It's time for me to take the helm. Your dreams are inherited by me. Let that be enough for you. Go back to your grave. As they rushed in to strike each other, Obito swung his gunbai, but Madara slid under it into an opening and swung his scythe. The scythe passed clean through Obito, but Obito didn't stop. At that last moment, he had used Kamui. He turned around to swing his own scythe, burying it deep into Madara's back, the tip exiting the front of his chest. Obito smiled, thinking that he had won. That was until Madara turned his head back to look at Obito with a smile, a Mangekyo Sharingan glowing, the same one that Obito once had.
My Kamui, Obito said. Did you think you were the only one to possess it, Madara said. I took this eye from that Hatake fellow. Your generosity all those years ago is your undoing. The only thing that you had that could save you from me is now in my possession.
Madara turned around and began to strike against Obito with his scythe and gunbai. Caught off guard, it was everything Obito could do to defend against it. That was until the gunbai Madara was using came around unexpectedly and struck him in the face, shattering the mask and sending Obito flying back into the wall. Filled with the joy of battle, Madara drew closer. Obito began to chuckle a little. Madara's smile began to fade when he heard it. You know, Madara, what you said would have merit, if it were true. You see, like you, I learned to have so many fail-safes that no matter what was chosen, my objectives would be complete. Obito opened his eyes to show that what once was an empty socket, having housed the eye Madara now had in his own head, bore a Rinnegan. It's ironic, Obito said. You have one of my eyes, and I have one of yours.
Was that eye not in the head of the Uzumaki boy who named himself Pain? Madara asked.
Obito nodded. It was. I took it from him. He was quite weak.
You sacrificed the Akatsuki to fulfill your desires. The Akatsuki and the Zetsu army. Your plan is to squander everything I gave you just to spite me.
Obito shook his head. Honestly, even if I had done so, starting from square one is better than being dead. No, I killed Conan and I killed Nagato, but his 6 paths of pain are preserved, and I plan to use them to puppet the Akatsuki. Nobody will know that there's been a change of management. Madara smiled. Very interesting way to shift resources. My compliments. Now I plan to take that eye back from you. As Obito wiped the blood from his face, he stood, still holding the gun by Uchiha and the scythe. Obito smiled. To the victor go the spoils, Obito said, though I doubt there's anything that you possess that I could possibly want. Madara ran closer, only for Obito to hold his hand out and blast Madara away with a single shot of his Diva Path. As soon as Madara hit the wall, Obito summoned a large multi-headed canine and sent it out. Madara activated his version 1 cloak and then struck the beast with his gunbai, sending it back. He fired a tailed beast ball at the creature, which sent it sliding back into the wall with a pained yelp. Obito would then use the Diva Path to pull Madara closer to him. Gripping Madara around the neck, he began to siphon his energy with the Predapath, giving Obito access to the same chakra cloaks of the Nine Tails as Madara had. He proceeded to throw Madara at the throne. If you want your throne back so bad, then take it. You can die on it like you did before. Madara hit the throne and stopped. As soon as he had thrown him, Obito summoned to their location the Gedo statue. Madara looked up at it with confusion. Obito let out the chains of the outer path to grip onto Madara's chakra.
Obito, what are you doing?
Madara demanded to know. I'm absorbing your chakra.
If you do this, you'll destroy the Gedo statue. You'll never be able to use it again,
Madara declared.
You would throw away our only chance at completing the Eye of the Moon plan.
Obito laughed. How naive. You forget the full extent of the Sharingan and its ability to rewrite reality. I can simply sacrifice a Sharingan to rewrite this reality and bring back the statue, but without you. Accept it, Madara, you're dead. Madara felt the Ninetales chakra being pulled out, and in an instant, his Ninetales was gone. Falling back into his chair, he felt his mind hazing over. How was this possible? How could he lose to Obito? As he sat there, Obito spoke. You were too full of yourself, Madara. Pride has always been your weakness. You never take things seriously enough. Now you're paying the price. He stood by the throne and leaned on it, looking down at Madara. You came unprepared. You didn't even bother to awaken the other Mangekyo Sharingan you have. If you had, you might have fared better. Heck, maybe you would have even beaten me depending on the Mangekyo you awakened. But you didn't. And honestly, I don't think you ever could again. You're a different man than you were then. Whatever honor or care for anyone else you had is gone. Your heart is too hard. You could never care about another person enough to awaken it. The only person you truly care about is yourself. This was the only outcome. Madara sat there and listened to what Obito said. He was right. The only person Madara truly cared about was himself, at least in an emotional sense. And as Madara reflected on this, he understood. He reflected on his past, his failures, his betrayals, all the times he had perished, all the faces of those around him. He felt guilt at his stupidity. He felt his arrogance and ego forcing him down a path. He recalled where he was, standing beneath the blood moon, the symbol of his Rinnegan lighting from it, and suddenly that hand passing through his chest. That cursed hand of Zetsu. Madara had always been the puppet master, or so he thought. The idea that he himself was the pawn enraged him. It filled him with hatred. Hatred toward Zetsu, hatred toward Obito, hatred toward himself. And the only person he could blame was himself. He was blinded by hubris, but no more. He would not be blinded by it ever again. That was if he ever even had a chance. That's when he felt it. As he inched closer to death, he felt the Rinnegan finally awaken in him, along with the Mangekyo that it further evolved from. As if instinct took over, Madara looked up at Obito, displaying his Rinnegan. He reached out to Obito and gripped him, utilizing the Predapath to siphon back the Ninetales chakra stolen from him. It wasn't enough to stop his dying, but it was enough to slow it. Madara used the Diva Path to push Obito away. As Obito hit the wall, Madara stood and inched closer to him. Obito saw this and began to panic. How did you awaken that? Obito demanded to know. Madara then spoke. You should know. The Rinnegan you possess originated with me. I am the next Sage of Six Paths. It's my power by birthright. You merely usurped it. You stole it, and can never get it back if taken from you. I originated with it. If I lose it, it remains mine. Obito tried to Kamui away, but Madara jammed it with his own. Obito then began to weave hand signs. He would release a fire-style jutsu toward Madara, who in turn summoned the Gunbai Uchiha to his hand and would block it. As the Gunbai took the attack, it converted the fire chakra to wind chakra and blew it back, sending the flames back at Obito. Obito raised his hand to absorb it with the Predapath, which he did. But as the flames left him behind, he didn't see the scythe flying through the air, striking him in the chest. Obito let out a cough and a startled gasp. Madara drew closer. You are a traitor, Obito.
You always were, and I was a fool to trust you. I was a fool to trust Zetsu. But unlike you, I will have the benefit of learning from my mistakes.
He looked at him in the eyes.
What was that you said about the Sharingan's ability to rewrite fate?
Obito's eyes widened as he heard Madara realizing what he was inferring. Madara then spoke.
When we first met, you tried to decline working with me. Do you remember what I said to you? I said if that were the case, I'd be taking your eyes for myself. Now I make good on that promise.
Madara reached out and plucked the dojutsu from Obito's head. Obito let out a muffled cry. Sitting in darkness, he felt himself bleeding out. Madara would look on at this pitiful sight. Taking up his gunbai, he would swing it with all of his might, shattering Obito's skull against the wall. Madara would look back at the Geto statue. It was ruined by Obito's foolish mistake, shattered by the overload the Nine Tails had caused. Utilizing the same Izanagi that Obito alluded to, Madara reversed the process and returned it to working order. He would then absorb the statue and its already absorbed tailed beasts into himself to help him survive the loss of the Nine Tails. Looking back at Obito, he realized that maybe he could still salvage this. He too would turn Nagato's 6 paths into his own and would, from the shadows, rule the Akatsuki. He pushed them forward to retrieving the other tailed beasts and would absorb each and every one of them personally until none remained. Absorbing the final tailed beast, Madara obtained his 10 Tails Jinchuriki mode and would then cast the world under the infinite Tsukiyomi as he had been determined to do. As the light of the moon shone down upon the whole world, everyone entered a never-ending dream. There was none on Earth still awake save Madara. Madara stood there as the tree stood tall, shining its Rinne Sharingan into the sky. That was when he heard a voice speak from behind him. Bravo! Madara turned back to see Fu standing there. Congratulations! You did so well. I'd say you broke a record. You're that man, Fu, Madara said. Fu nodded. Indeedy. Fu looked around. What power will this timeline offer me? What do you plan to do? Madara said. I plan to absorb this timeline's energy for myself. The timeline will cease to exist, but the power it was made up of will be mine to use for other experiments. I worked for this world, and I slaved over it. This is my world. I won't just let you destroy it. Madara entered a defensive position. Fu sighed and shook his head. Not that you could if you wanted to, but for a man as intelligent as you, I assumed you could see the bigger picture. What picture? Madara demanded to know. Fu smiled. Come with me. He snapped his fingers, and suddenly both Madara and Fu were transported to his laboratory. Within, Fu led Madara to an open window. Look at this, Fu said. Madara looked out and saw a void among which seemed to be an infinite number of stars existing in all directions he turned. What is this? Outer space? Madara asked. Nope, this is outside space. This is all the dimensions and timelines of your world that have ever existed and ever can exist. An infinite number of dimensions, each within their own infinite number of subsets. There's one of these for every world imaginable. This is the existence you come from, one in infinity. You fought so hard for your world, but despite that, there's still an infinite number of worlds. Some where you won, some where you lost. Madara, for the first time in a long time, felt his legs shaking. Fu laughed. Overwhelming, I know. To find out that you're an infinitesimally small speck in an infinitesimally small speck surrounded by other infinitesimally small specks in an infinitely large speck, it just goes on forever. This is the world of possibilities, where anything can happen. This is my playground, and this is what I want to share with you. Madara was in shock. He couldn't believe it, to think that the world really was that large. But then his mind reset. So what does any of this mean to me? I could never change all of this. This is for my other selves to change. I succeeded in my world. Why should anything else matter? Fu looked down. Because anything can happen. Anything is possible out here. I want you to help me. I want to know what this world is capable of and what we can do about it. In the grand scheme of things, your world doesn't matter. Maybe it matters to you, but I could easily move on to the next schmuck and see if they'll join me. You have a unique opportunity because out of all the infinitely infinite number of yous that exist, I've chosen you above them all. We can make the multiverse what we want it to be. All I ask is that you work with me. Madara looked down at this multiverse and let out a sigh. I'm hardly interested in the scientific aspect of this, he said. Fu hung his head low. Damn it, I thought you'd be the perfect candidate to help me. I never said I wasn't in. You said that these worlds go on forever, correct? Fu nodded. Madara smiled. Then this means that there will be endless battles with people stronger than I. Fu's smile once more widened across his face. Is that what you wish to do with your exploration of this world? Madara nodded.
Give me my old body back, and allow me to explore as I please, and when you have need of me, I will answer your call.
Fu began to clap his hands. You have a deal. Snapping his fingers, he returned Madara to his true self. Madara looked himself over with a smile.
Perfect. I look forward to working with you, Madara said.
Fu held his hand out, and the two sealed their new alliance with a shake. Oh, joy! All the stories we've been telling since, and all the stories we'll tell from here on, Fu said, wiping a joyful tear from his eye.
You know, I haven't been fighting as much as I thought I would, Madara said.
You got to fight that Lee guy, Fu said. Besides, when the Time War begins, you'll fight all the strongest guys you can imagine. We'll finally get to answer the age-old question, if you can beat Goku. Madara smiled.
I suppose that's true.
Fu looked back to the TV. Honestly, when I came back from death, I was a little lonely. I know it's shameful to admit such a thing to another strong man like you, but I've been by myself for a long time. And frankly, it's nice to have you and Eren around.
You called for me, Eren asked.
Fu turned around. Welcome, Eren! We just finished watching how me and Madara met. I feel like you should join us.
I'd rather not.
Nonsense. Make yourself comfortable and sit down before I sit you down. Eren begrudgingly took a seat. And as for you guys, here are some other videos this Amagi guy has done. He's very good at recording our experiments. So if you like our experiments, be sure to like and subscribe to the guy. Ring the bell and you'll be the first to experience our new What If universes as we experience them. Leave a comment below with an experiment idea, and if it's not absolute garbage, maybe I'll consider it. Ta-ta!